today is officially the date, September the 2nd, 1945, when Japan surrendered in World War II above the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Okay? 80 years, exactly, September the 2nd. So what Viking asked me to do is actually talk about the war, what caused it, and up to the surrender time, and what the US and the Allies did to cause this surrender by the Japanese, and how Asia over recovered. You'll be surprised. Is anyone familiar with Asia in general? So yeah, well, you'll understand that. I used to live in Asia myself, in Singapore for a couple of years, so I'm sort of familiar with the area. But let's get going here. So that's the title of the presentation. And when we look at the Japanese occupation, it's pretty widespread. It happened over just basically a couple of years, but the red area is the areas they occupied. Primarily is northeastern China, Southeast Asia, pretty much all of that, and Micronesia, where it's at Guam, Mariana Islands, and Palau's in there as well. And it shows the area where they sort of colonized or invaded. So we'll look at it a little bit more. So why did they do it? It's a big question. Initially, it was a need for critical supplies, metal, rubber, and oil. That's what they were searching for. The quest to dominate also that region was part of their agenda. So what they did as they sort of got going on this project, if you want to call it that, was to secure all the shipping routes in the area, and in turn build up all the defenses as much as possible. So those were the first two steps: natural resources, natural products, and the quest to dominate that Western Pacific region for themselves. But one of the main things is to liberate Asian countries from Western colonization. And in their eyes, the culprits were quite a few. They were Britain, Spain, Portugal, France, the Netherlands, USA, and even Russia. Those were, in their eyes, the culprits. They just did not want any Western nations in the area. So that was their motivation. So things started to go bad. So let's have a look a bit further at the time frame of everything here. Japan already occupied Taiwan, previously Formosa, in 1895. Then in 1910, they took over Korea. But things started to deteriorate, and there's rumblings something worse might happen. And the first step was China in Manchuria, where they occupied that area, pretty much right before the World War II started. All right. Then after that, when the war had actually started, which was, in 1939, September the 1st, funnily enough, September 1st, and they occupied what we call is French Indochina, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos in 1940. But after that, they expanded to colonize pretty much everywhere in Southeast Asia, all those nations. So it was bad until 1945, which is when they basically surrendered. So the impact was devastating. Economic exploitation, atrocities, human rights violations, to name the worst of it. Obviously, over time, there were resistance movements. There always are on conflicts when colonizations take place. Resistance by the people who live in these places. So those got increased over time, and down at the bottom, infrastructure and political changes. So of course that's going to happen, but the worst part are the atrocities and the human rights violations that occurred. So the start of it, 1931, it was really when Japan, the next door neighbor, you see the map there, that's where Manchuria is. It's on the sort of very northeastern end of China, the next door neighbors. So Japan invades that area. And in 1937, they increased that. They increased, it was like an invasion. And that was the start of the Sino-Japanese war, conflict war between China and Japan. The official start date of World War II, like I mentioned, is 1939, September the 1st, caused by when Germany invaded Poland. The day after they did that, Britain and France declared war on Germany. And everything went bad after that. The first countries where Japan, after the official start of the war, they invaded and colonized Japan was French Indochina, which is basically Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia. All right? They eventually became independent, of course. And then, here's the big date. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, December the 7th in 1941, that was really the decision that caused the US to join World War II, without a doubt. USA was involved then in World War II and never to look back. Things got worse. Japanese colonized pretty much all of Southeast Asia, all the countries you could think of, Malaysia, Philippines, and the rest of them, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Singapore. Thailand, why is Thailand highlighted there? Because Thailand at the time showed no resistance to Japan, no resistance at all. They let them come in. They obviously soon after regretted that by all the atrocities that took place. But basically insignificant in the whole scheme of things because, you know, they occupied all those southeastern nations, which are fantastic places, by the way. That was in 1942. But in 1944, that's when things started to take a turn for the worse for Japan. The United States retook the Philippines. And then the British and the Chinese retook Myanmar, which was then called Burma. So things started to turn around. And of course, because of that, what happened of USA taking back the Philippines, there was an increased amount of resistance in all the other nations. So things were getting bad. And this has started what we call the decline. Defeats in the Pacific region, strategic bombing by the United States in Japan, and loss of territories, of course, naval blockades, and eventually loss of allies. If you call Germany an ally of Japan, well, in May of 1945, that's when officially German surrendered to the Allies. 1945, that's a big one. So as we move on, this was a major deal between these dates. And you know about these dates because it obviously was big news. August 6, 1945, President Harry Truman ordered the bomb to be dropped on Hiroshima, August 6. That killed at least 140,000 people, probably more after the fact as well. Obviously, it killed a lot of people. 3 days later, they dropped the bomb on Nagasaki, which killed about 70,000 people, and more with the after effects of the bomb being dropped. And that was a devastating event for Japan, of course. And if you look down the highlights, you see their location with regards to Tokyo. Tokyo was very sort of crowded. Did Tokyo think they were going to be next? Quite possibly. So action needed to be taken, but there was one other factor between August the 6th and August the 9th that helped bring this horrible war to the close, and it was on August the 8th the Soviet Union declared war on Japan also. They retook Manchuria and also took ownership or colonized a couple of the Japanese islands, right? So, but on top of that, the Japanese had an elite army, Kwantung Army. The Russians defeated them as well. So all these blows made Japan suffer. They had to make a decision. Okay, so it was time. They'd lost so many people through the bombs, and the rest of the world was picking on them. The Japanese leadership was split on a decision. They had to make a decision. So they left it up to Emperor Hirohito to make that decision for them, because it was a split decision. But basically, they didn't have a choice. And he made the decision that Japan should surrender, and he made a radio address on August 15th to across the nation of Japan. And he told everyone, we are going to surrender, and he used the reason for the new and cruel bomb. That was it. But there was no escape. They had really no choice. The rest of the world was picking on them. And so that's what would happen there. So the official September the 2nd date, 80 years ago exactly, the formal surrender was done on board the USS Missouri. General Douglas MacArthur was on board that day, and the representatives from the Japanese government. But this USS Missouri was parked in Tokyo Bay there to make sure everything went okay, and it did. And then that was the official end of World War II, the official end. And so these two big days stick in our minds forever. Victory over Europe Day and victory over Japan Day. May the 8th, 1945 and September the 2nd, 1945. Then you think about all the loss of life, the innocent citizens, people of the world who died. Not only British, Americans, citizens of the world, Australians, but also the Japanese people as well. And what a horrific sight. Now I'm just thinking here, you know, as we move forward, I don't know how old everyone is here, but I'm sure everyone here knows somebody, or they have relatives, parents who were involved some way in World War II. My parents were as well. More about that a bit later on. But in 1945, obviously Japan couldn't be left alone, so it was occupied by the United States and some Allied forces partners to actually sort out Japan, basically, disarmed it and rebuilt it to be a decent place. And it's amazing to me how short a time that happened in, over 7 years. Over 5 years, their sovereignty was restored, but they became independent again 7 years after the end of World War II, which is amazing. So all these reforms controlled by the US and Allies, so things started to look up. Now, I brought this up because there were so many movies made about World War II, and specifically about Japan, and there's some made about Germany as well, and what happened in Europe. But you may remember these movies. And when I started to look at this a bit more, I'm going to have to look at this. I remember seeing The Bridge Over the River Kwai, and starred Sir Alec Guinness. And it's all about them building a railway from Burma into Thailand to transport people and goods, and how torturous it was for the British subjects, Australian, Dutch people, and Americans as well. Some Americans were there also that were transferred, captured in the Philippines and transferred to this area. Tora 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 was about the events leading up to Pearl Harbor. Letters from Iwo Jima is the movie. It was directed by Clint Eastwood. And it's about the feelings and opinions of some Japanese soldiers during that time. There's more to it than that, the basics. And so it's a classic movie. Empire of the Sun was directed by Steven Spielberg. And this is about a British boy who was in a prison camp in China during that period of time. Again, there's more to it than these are the basic definitions, but there's a lot more movies. Pearl Harbor, obviously the movie about it. The Flowers of War, about a bunch of Chinese people, especially women, who were hiding out in a church in China during the Japanese occupation. A World Apart was in Hong Kong. And why does Hong Kong come to mind? Well, the British leased Hong Kong in 1897 to 1997. I remember when they gave it back in 1997. It's just a lease agreement for trading purposes. So the British were prevalent in the area, but this World Apart in Hong Kong was about how the Japanese treated the citizens of Hong Kong. Dreadful, of course. And finally, to end all wars, in Myanmar. This is awful, actually, about the way the British prisoners and other nations were held captive, and to help build the Burmese railway, and the torturous conditions and what they had to endure. Amazing. But Asia's transformation was such that it wasn't without problems. Obviously, it wasn't just a smooth transition, but decolonization of Southeast Asia had to happen, which it did, and there was independence for French Indonesia, those countries, as you know, and Korea. And Soviet Union took control of North Korea, USA took control of South Korea. Still divided today, but independent, if you know what I mean. And China, well, they were going through a civil war before this war. They resumed that, or what? But it wasn't over. Over the years after the World War II, there were other issues, because obviously we remember the Vietnam War, and we probably know people that were involved in that war, and Myanmar, ongoing issues there, and especially at the border with Thailand. There've been skirmishes break out fairly often, not so much now. The Korean War, the Cambodian War with the Khmer Rouge, and the Cambodian and Vietnamese dispute there. So it's been going on, but all in all, everything has got a lot better. And Asia today, from what it went through to what it is today, it really deserves, a lot of credit. Japan's changed. Japan's become this awesome country now. But what Asia's managed to do is preserve all their historical sites and wonders of nature. Yeah, there's so many wonders of nature in Asia, and I'll talk about them in a minute. It's culturally rich, and you always find the Asian people very welcoming. That is still prevalent today. Iconic landmarks are still there, but modern development, if you look at some of the development that's gone in some of these countries, it's absolutely amazing. So let's take a look at this. Singapore, where that country has come from. It's one of the most affluent countries in the world. Cleanliness is spotlessly clean. One of the world's best education and healthcare systems. Education system built on the British public education system, and it's got a good reputation. World's best airport, has been for many years, and to me the world's best airline. Singapore Airlines, they're always in the top three basically. The other two, I think Etihad, and I can't remember the other one, but they've come a long way. And it is virtually crime-free. Having lived there, everyone gets along. But did you know that it's also the most religiously diverse country in the world? So we can't really say too many different religions are there, that's causing all the arguments. No, it's the opposite end of the scale. It's virtually crime-free and the most religious diverse country in the world. And I was there just a year and a half ago. This picture I took from the top of the Marina Bay Sands into the city. Obviously it's modern, a lot of people live there, and that's the Marina Bay Sands with a theme park on the top. But some of the architecture that's taken place there over the years, even after I left in 2008, Gardens on the Bay, fantastic places for people to go to, and it's, as I said, perfectly safe. And then Changi Airport, there's no airport that comes close to that. It'd be great to take the family there for a weekend, just stay at the airport, to be honest with you. So it's come a long way, modern and sophisticated. Taiwan. This year it's been classified as the world's best healthcare system. A number of factors that determine that. Basically, cost, distribution, fairness, administration, etc. A number of other reasons. Leader in the production of microchips, and also the 14th richest country in the world today. And free Wi-Fi for all. Wherever you live today, I live in America and Britain, wouldn't it be great if we all had free Wi-Fi? That would be a great thing, but it's all available to all the public. Vietnam, world's leading supplier of coffee, but also the leading manufacturer of garments and textiles, manufacturing. Rapid economic growth, so since the Vietnamese War, they've actually expanded, and it's become actually a wonderful place to visit, but economically it's doing very, very well. Hospitable and friendly, so wherever you go in Vietnam, north or south, and it's lovely, lovely people. On the left, I took this when I was in Hanoi quite a few years ago, and it's somewhat chaotic, but everyone gets along. Cross the road there, and you have to watch out for bikes, but that's all right. And I was fortunate to go there just 2 years ago. One of the wonders of nature, Halong Bay. It's 500 million years old. One of nature's wonders. And there's still people who live on the water there. About 1,600 people live in water villages around there, but they preserve that. It's a very important sort of a wonder of nature, but the country do their best to preserve their wonders of nature. Excellent. Philippines, leading in overseas workers. Wherever you go, even on cruise ships, hotels, wherever, you might find Filipinos working. Very nice people, and they're good at what they do. It's also the contact center capital of the world. It was always a toss-up between them and India, but I think basically technology-wise, Philippines have taken over that. And another one I've noticed is musicians. I call them most underrated musicians in the world. Why? Because they're actually brilliant. Wherever you go in the world, it could be a hotel, it could be on a cruise ship, it could be at a club somewhere, whether it's Middle East, Europe, chances are you might find some Filipinos playing in the band. They're excellent musicians. I was in Manila just early part of 2024, and I walked down to the local restaurant bar there, and there's a Filipino band playing, and they're playing some difficult, challenging songs like by Dire Straits, and they hit it perfectly. And I've noticed that they're just very talented musicians. And Filipinos also has some of the best tropical islands in the world: Palawan, Coron, Boracay, beautiful places, very well preserved. They're trying to control crowds and tourists, but there are some beautiful spots there, and they're a country worth visiting, and they've done well. So this is Makati. It's a suburb of Manila, and here, when I was there a year or so ago, this is the Peninsula Hotel. Went there for afternoon tea, as the English do, and they've got the orchestra playing on the top of the balcony there, playing classical music. And I was thinking, how can this country have gone through such a hard time? It is where it is today. And that shows the transition from what was then to what it is now. Laos. The thing about Laos that people don't know, home to the best preserved cultural heritage, and that is Luang Prabang. I've been to Laos twice, once to the capital, Vientiane, and I went to Luang Prabang, and my first impression when I got there was, where is everybody? Where are all the cars? It's not overcrowded at all. This is a lot to do with the past, the bombing. Laos is the most heavily bombed country in the history of the world, per capita. And there's still many unexploded bombs there. But the perseverance of the people is admirable. They've got through this, and it's friendly and welcoming. Luang Prabang is almost a wonder of nature. It's a beautiful spot, peace and quiet, and it's come a long way. It's still developing, but it's come a long way since those dark days. I know I put this at the bottom, but in my humble opinion, this is the best beer in Asia. Be allowed. Try it out. You can get it in the States. So, and that's the presidential palace in Vientiane, and that, Luang Prabang. Just find a place to stay and walk up and down the street, or walk around the area, or go out into the rainforest. It's gorgeous. It's come a long way from those dark days. South Korea, a world leader in technology and innovation. What's called the plastic surgery of the world at one time, but we've got Kia and Hyundai based out of there. And from an intellectual standpoint, very high literacy rates, probably very high up in mathematics and science subject. Very high IQ as well. Very intelligent people. That's why technically they're experts in what they do. So it's come a long way, and it's very forward thinking. Spectacular. I haven't spent much time there, but nevertheless it's a place worth going to. Malaysia, home to the world's tallest twin towers. It was until, I don't know, 10 years ago. I'm not sure, probably more than that. It was the tallest building in the world until they built the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So, but it's still the world's tallest towers there. Multicultural harmony at its best. You've got people from all different nations living there, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, and they all live peacefully. Obviously, it's just north of Singapore, so one rubs off from the other. So it's a peaceful place, lovely place to visit. Home to the oldest tropical rainforest. Not so much in Malaysia's mainland, but Borneo is part of Malaysia. And I've trekked that rainforest, by the way, a few years ago, and it's quite, you know, it's incredible biodiversity, animal life. The quality of it is fantastic, and a leader in medical tourism as well. So it's come a long way. That's me a few years ago, and they're the Twin Towers. I had a meeting there with a company that's in the one at the right-hand side of that tower. You know, it's Microsoft actually. I don't know if they're there today. And all the places there might have a theme park, but it's beautiful, immaculate, all things good. I always like going back there. Thailand. They've been through a lot, but today it's classed as a land of smiles. It's probably the most welcoming country I have ever been to. Bangkok, well, it's chaotic, but there's so many different areas, from the jungles in the north to the beaches in the south. Friendliness of people is unbelievable. A world leader in ecotourism, it is, and homes to the biggest water festival, Songkran. It's celebrated. I'm not going into details, but I didn't know it when I went there, but I was walking down the street and people were shooting at me with water pistols. I thought, what's going on? And I learned about Songkran. It goes on for 24 hours. It's fun. People enjoy themselves. And home to the most affordable luxury 5-star hotels. So all the main special expensive hotels are there in the country somewhere. Okay? Where it's Mandarin Oriental, the Amman, the Anantara, they're all there. But to stay there is, honestly, it's almost a fraction of the price if you stayed at that type of hotel in some other country. It's fantastic. So, land of smiles. And first time I went to Thailand was in 1980. Now I could say I went there when I was 2 years old, but you wouldn't believe me. But yeah, I went there in 1980, and you know, I was growing up in England. Me and my mates used to go to Spain for a holiday, and I wanted to go somewhere different, but I couldn't get anyone to come with me over to Asia. So I went by myself to Asia, and one of the places I went to was Thailand, but about 100 miles away from Bangkok is this place, Kanchanaburi, and that's where the bridge over the River Kwai was. That's a film version, but that's what it was. It was rebuilt in 1946. That's a picture of what it was like when I was there, and I got to better understand what went on during those evil days with the prisoners of war. So it was interesting. I stayed a couple of days there before heading back to Bangkok. Bangkok, yes, it's chaotic, but I call it brilliant chaos because it's organized to a degree. I don't like chaotic places these days. That's one of the largest escalators I've ever been on. It's in one of the shopping malls, and yeah, it's busy, but they have the MRT, the train, people getting around normal, and it's somewhat nice to be there, even though it's chaotic. That's Bangkok. Indonesia. How's that come a long way? Well, think about Indonesia. It's a vast country, but it's home to the most biodiverse marine area in the world. And they preserved it all of these years. I do scuba diving a lot, and when it went to Raja Ampat, I've done the Great Barrier Reef, and I've done the Andaman Sea and other places, but I've never seen underwater life like this. The coral system was perfect, and I saw creatures swimming around there that I'd never seen anywhere else in the world, and this was one of them, a wobbegong shark. And there's some weird stuff down there, but the whole area is pristine, and thanks to the Indonesian government, they've restricted the number of tourists they've let in there. You gotta have a permit to go there and dive in this area, but it's somewhat special. They deserve a lot of credit for preserving Mother Nature. One of the most diverse cultures, yeah. There are about 300 ethnic groups who live there today, and about 700 different languages that are spoken. That's amazing. It is the world's largest Muslim population. Yeah, except Bali. Bali is predominantly Hindu. But everyone gets along, but each island in Indonesia has its own sort of personality. Even though it's a Muslim country, I've never had a problem with Indonesia at all. It's just been very welcoming. I've enjoyed it. World's largest producer of nutmeg. I don't know if that's anything significant. Well, 90% of it, but it's used. There we go. And that's an I stayed in that place, that's Raja Ampat, but the water just like is serene, and there are natives, people living in the area, and that's how they love living there, because they want to. and Balinese dancing. Every dance tells a story. This is how they live their life. China, world's largest manufacturing hub, world's largest exporter, world's fastest infrastructure development. Yep, and they've come a long way as well. Interesting. And world leader in renewable energy. And this picture, I landed at Shanghai Airport several years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago. And if I wanted to get a taxi from Shanghai Airport to downtown Shanghai, the journey would take just over an hour. That is the world's fastest train. It took 8 minutes. Built on magnetic technology, no wheels. Just sit forward facing if you go on this thing, by the way. But yeah, unbelievable technology, how they move forward. And that's Hong Kong, to me, the most vibrant place on the planet. Kowloon in Victoria Island, that's taken at the top of Victoria Island. It's vibrant. Yes, it's overcrowded, but there's something special about that place. So it's amazing from the dark days of World War II how these nations have actually pulled through and advanced in technology and lives. Cambodia, bring this, resilience and perseverance by its population, and they're not afraid to share their past, and have had a dark past, as you know. Best budget destination, of course. You can go there, stay cheap if you want to, and there's a lot to see there, and home to the world's largest religious building, which is Angkor Wat. Used to be a Hindu temple up to the 12th century, became a Buddhist temple. Yes, you can go there. That's that in Phnom Penh. That's the king's place there. So Cambodia offers a lot, and it's safe these days. And Myanmar, I have to say, is a work in progress. It is, and it seems to have problems today, but it's better there now than it used to be. Producer of the world's best jade and valuable rubies, and returning of expats. I'll tell you about that in a minute more. And called the Golden Land because it is rich in natural resources. On the left is Shwedagon Pagoda, one of the most, I say, valuable buildings, but it's all gold, inside and out. It's a mecca for Buddhists. The top area is 2,000 rubies and diamonds in that area. And it's a special kind of place, but it's a mecca for people who follow Buddhism. On the right, the Strand Hotel. Wonder where that name came from. London. The Strand Hotel. Yes, I was in there. There's a British pub inside, and that's when I met up with a bunch of British people. They were having afternoon tea, and I thought, I asked them about their lives, but their ancestors were there during World War II. Funny enough. And then when World War II ended, most of them went back to Britain. But after a few years, they decided to go back to Myanmar because they were absorbed in the culture there and loved it so much. A lot of them went back to Yangon, used to be Rangoon, and went back to Myanmar to live. They had maids and stuff, but they were all that day at afternoon tea. That's about 20 or 30 of them. And that's why expats going back to a place that was such a hellhole, if you will, all that time ago. Now, some final thoughts before we end up here. Is World War II ended, as did World War I. My parents, I'll tell you before, I'm from Coventry, England, and my parents were World War II veterans. They're both in the Air Force, but they happened to be in Coventry the night the Coventry Blitz happened. Coventry was one, apart from London, was one of the two most bombed cities in World War II. Right? There's a reason for that. It was the centre of the engineering industry. That's where they built many of the cars. But the Coventry Blitz happened one night, I think in 1940, 11 hours of continuous bombing. Many of its citizens died. My parents survived happily because I'm here, you know, and the city went through a lot. Now I'm from Coventry. Your other speaker, Rob, he's actually from Hull, and that is the other city that was bombed more than any in Britain. So those two cities were bombed quite badly. And, you know, My parents, what they went through, my godfather was in Dunkirk, Battle of Dunkirk on the beach, but my parents never talked about World War II. They didn't want to. They didn't want to get into discussion about it. And I've heard that from so many people, even from the Vietnam War. People don't really want to talk about it because of the horrors from that. So I wanted to learn more about it. So I went on the road a bit. I thought, you know, I need to learn a bit more about this myself. So I'm not saying you should go here, but what I found out when I went to the picture on the left, if you fly to Krakow in Poland, about an hour away is Auschwitz. I had to see it to believe it. There's 3 camps there. That's the infamous wall of death. I don't know how many people were killed there, but this is what the Germans did during that period of time. And there were British, Americans there, people from all over, and obviously primarily Jewish people in Auschwitz. It's horrific. And my thought is, how can people be so cruel? Then, the place on the right, if it couldn't get any worse than what went on in Cambodia with the Khmer Rouge, I went to see the killing fields. Up to about 2 million people were slaughtered there. That lake contained about 300 bodies. And I'm thinking, why did we even go through those days? But we could be fortunate, say we were born at the right time and born in the right era. But lessons learned, and I think, you know, I have to thank the people who are in the military, what the United States did to help end the wars, and what Britain and all the Allies did to take us away from this bad thing. That's why we have to remember what happened all those years ago with VE Day and VJ Day.